Hungarian soft-style fascism is the GOP's ruthless new brand. And, many of us have compared the Republican Party to Hitler and Mussolini and Franco and Pinochet. Those guys had what you could call hard fascism. They were out in the streets, they were lining people up, they were shooting them, they were digging mass graves, they were dumping them out of helicopters, they were building death camps. That's not today's Republican Party. They might get there someday, but today's Republican Party instead of modeling after Hitler, Mussolini, Franco, those guys, they're modeling themselves after somebody entirely different. Today's Republican Party has decided in just the last year or so, now keep in mind, it was 3 years ago that 7 Republican members of Congress went to Russia to spend the 4th of July with President Putin. That was Richard Shelby of Alabama, Steve Daines of Montana, John Thune of South Dakota, John Kennedy of Louisiana, Jerry Moran of Kansas, John Hoeven of North Dakota, and Kay Granger of Texas. So, 7 Republicans go to Russia, one a member of the House, to hang out, in the Kremlin for to celebrate the 4th of July. That was so old school. That was 3 years ago. Now, they're no longer looking to Putin and Russia as their role model. They are looking to Hungary and Viktor Orbán. And seriously looking to Hungary as the new model for American democracy. Viktor Orbán has done in Hungary what Republicans want to do in the United States. He has succeeded in establishing basically soft fascism in Hungary. And he's been so successful at it that Tucker Carlson went over and did his show from Hungary for a week on Fox So-Called News, and all but offered Orbán a full body massage during the commercial breaks, just giving him a tongue bath. The Conservative Political Action Committee, those of you who have been longtime listeners to this program, we've been on the air since 2003. It's 18 years. The first decade or so of this program, well, I'd say probably from about 2005 or 2006, right up until about 5 years ago or so, every year I would go to the CPAC convention. They had a radio row there, and I would debate conservatives. I'd sit in the row, and Republican politicians would come along, and they'd sit down with Sean Hannity, and they'd sit down with Rusty Humphreys, and then they sit down with me. And sometimes they were very surprised by that. In fact, in 2008, at their convention, I had the head of the RNC, and in the middle of my question, I started asking him if women who got abortions should be executed by firing squad or being hanged, and he suddenly goes, "Wait a minute, you're a liberal!" And he pulls his headphones off and jumps up and stalks off. So anyhow, the CPAC has always been a Republican thing, right? Ronald Reagan keynoted their first convention in 1974. Every Republican president since has keynoted CPAC. CPAC just announced that they're holding next year's meeting in Budapest, Hungary. Why? Why is it that all of a sudden everybody's going to Budapest? Well, because Viktor Orbán has pioneered this new kind of soft fascism. Steve Bannon called Orbán Trump before Trump. Michael Casey over at NBC News Think site said, quote, "From targeting migrants to inflaming an ethno-nationalist base, from attacking the press to whipping up nativist conspiracies, from ushering in unprecedented corruption to tearing down democratic protections, Trumpism is increasingly indistinguishable from Orbánism." I mentioned Tucker Carlson and Ronald Reagan. Well, here's how Orbán got where he is. He ran on a slogan, "Making Hungary great again," strengthening Christianity, and building a wall against Hungary's southern border to stop non-white Muslim Syrian refugees from coming into Hungary. He's also now trying to keep out people from Slovakia. Once he took power, his party altered the Constitution to do what you and I might call gerrymandering, so that basically his party will never be out of power again. He's also packed Hungary's courts, including their Supreme Court, so any challenges to him or his party just die in the courts. Women in Hungary have been marginalized. Viktor Orbán said that Hungarian politics is continual character assassination that women cannot endure. And so the governing coalition, which has 133 members of parliament, only has 11 women in it. Sort of looking like the Republican Party, right? Increasingly, he's turned Hungary into a refugee or a refuge for corrupt oligarchs and neo-fascists from other countries. He just granted, for example, asylum to convicted felon and former Prime Minister of Macedonia, Nicolae Gruevski. NBC News says, in many ways, Trump and Orbán are birds of an autocratic feather. Is Trump preparing for a visa? Orbán has taken part of the Hungarian security apparatus and turned it into his own private personal police force, much like Trump did with members of ICE and the Border Patrol that he used, for example, to attack Lafayette Square, and that he sent here to Portland to attack citizens in Portland. The nation's business scene in Hungary has been completely taken over by Orbán's buddies. He's created a whole new generation of oligarchs. All the major news outlets, all the television networks, all the radio networks, all the major newspapers in Hungary are now owned by Orbán cronies. There is still a small independent press in Hungary, but they're largely ignored by everybody because they have no voice. They can't, there's no way to get their stuff out. Orbán's declared a war on science. He shut down the Hungarian Science Academy. He says climate change is left-wing trickery made up by Barack Obama. Last month, Hungary passed a law requiring sex education in schools to say that being gay was bad. And they also banned any positive portrayal of LGBTQ people on television in Hungary. They've conflated homosexuality with pedophilia. The latest anti-gay law passed the Hungarian parliament just a few months ago by a vote of 157 to 1. So, a lot of Americans thought, wait a minute, the Republican Party is like going the way of the fascists, or they're going to hang out with Putin too much. No, that's not what's going on. Bannon called just last week for shock troops to immediately take over the government right after the 2024 elections is almost identical to what Viktor Orbán did when he returned to power in 2010 in Hungary. He gave his party control over the voting process nationally. Are they going to get away with it?